Hello, ladies. Welcome to our latest edition of Property for Chicks. I have with me my lovely co-host, Rachel. Hello, Rachel. Welcome.
Thank you, Karen. Hello, everybody, on this lovely warm day. Good to see you all.
Enjoying winter on the southeast of Queensland.
Not so cold, which is nice.
Not so cold. Short sleeves.
Yeah.
Alrighties. Well, today we're covering one of Rachel and my favourite topics. Well, favourite might be a little bit too much of an exaggeration. One of the most essential topics that we deal with constantly, and that's on feasibilities. I know I said last week I didn't like mathematics, and I don't. But there are times you actually need to use it. And thank goodness for Excel and formulas, and it can do it all for me. So today we're going to go through feasibility. So whether you're buying your first home or you're buying a major development property, we're going to go through all the costs that can be involved. So the first lot, no matter whether you're buying 20 lot subdivision or you're buying a home, you're still going to pay all these costs. So we'll cover all that first, and then we'll go on to the more complicated stuff. So
yeah.
Anything you'd like to add before we start, Rachel?
Yeah, look, feasibilities, they are really one of the most important things I think you need to do when you're assessing a site. And like you said, whether it's your own home or you're buying an investment property or looking at a development site, it really is essential that you run your numbers and you continue to run your numbers through your project. And Karen and I were only discussing this yesterday in relation to a site we've been looking at for a small development, and the buy-in price that the owner bought it for, they obviously didn't run their numbers, because now it's worth $200,000 less than what they paid for it. So it really is such an important topic, and it's not difficult to learn how to do a feasibility, is it, Karen?
No. And they keep evolving, and as you do more and more projects or you buy more and more houses, you can start to work around them. You get to know your figures, so they're constantly an evolving thing. So
yes, absolutely. So no, one of my favorite topics, because I always say the numbers never lie, and if we get the numbers right, then hopefully the development or the purchase is going to be successful.
Yes. And this is also a good thing if you're selling a site that's for development. It'll give you an idea what the other side, how they work out their numbers, that comes up with what they will pay for your property as well. So it works both sides.
Yeah.
So we're going to do a lot of screenshots today on Excel, and I've redone everything up on Word so you can see it on the screen. We'll just show you briefly first one of Rachel's feasos, and then one of mine. So everybody has their own sort. So I've seen some that are about 5 pages long, an entire Excel database. And as you get through a project, they do get a little more in detail. But this is what we use up front to decide whether we're going to buy the property or not in the first place. So, right, let me get this.
Here we go. Put my glasses on.
Oh, no, what have I done? Here we go. Right, so this is an actual site, one of Rachel's that we've been looking over for a while. Once again, just purchase price, all the costs, all the sales, GST, and of course the bit you always want to see is this bit down the bottom, your net profit percentage and how much money you're going to make. So that's one of Rachel's, and then mine looks fractionally different colours. I've got specific financiers and all their deals, and I put that over to the side. You can do interest, because sometimes you'll own the land for 12 months, but you'll only do a bill for 6 months, so your interest rate's calculated differently. But once again, there's your percentage and how much you're going to make. It's exactly the same details as what Rachel has in hers. It just looks different. So that's what they look like.
Yours looks a bit prettier than mine.
Yeah, I got prettier colours on mine. Okay. So a full feasibility study is usually just called a feaso. Mostly because people can't spell feasibility, but we want to just call it a feaso.
And Excel doesn't do spell check.
No, Excel doesn't do spell check. Now, whether you're buying your first home or, as I said, a big development site, it can cost up to 7% of your purchase costs in other costs, which is what a lot of times people don't account for, especially if it's an investment, because you'll pay a higher stamp duty. And if you're getting a loan, you're paying loan fees. So just for an example, a $600,000 property could cost you up to $42,000 in fees. So that's something you need to take in account. You either need to have that money in cash, or you need to have the ability to loan that extra amount to pay all those costs. So let's go through what some of those costs are. Unless I do my own selling conveyancing, because I've done it lots, but I would never do my own buying conveyancing. There's just too much to it. So you need to pay a conveyancer. If you're buying a development site, it's going to be a lawyer. So they start at about $1,400. Now there's your stamp duty just on that $600,000 property. That's if you're an owner occupier. And if you're an investment, you pay an extra $7,000 just for the pleasure. So there's a huge whack of your upfront costs already. Now I have this lovely little app on my phone. It's a free app. It's a Stamp Duty Australia calculator. And you just simply put in your price, what state you're in, what you use it for. It's either primary or investment. You only got two options. And whether it's an established property or a vacant land. And then it gives you your total down the bottom. I use it probably 3 times a day to calculate what stamp duty is. So that's a free app you can have on your phone. You go, oh, that's a nice house. Gee, let's see how many extra costs we're up for. That's lovely.
That's a great one, Karin. I don't have that on my phone. I've got mine automated, but I'm on my computer. But I'm going to download that one. That's a good one.
Very good. I haven't done mine automated yet. Right, so they're the most basic things you always have to pay for when you buy anything. Then you have these other little bits and pieces. Now, good old councils, they make you pay 6 months in advance. Water can be a bit of both, and body corps usually in advance as well. So if you happen to buy a property at the beginning of the, say, a 6-month cycle, it gets prorated back. So if the rate cycle goes from January to June, the first 6 months of the year, and you settle the property in February, well, you got to pay the rates then for the February, March, April, May, June. And if it's an expensive place or it's got a high property valuation, that can add up to thousands of dollars that you pay back the original owner because they haven't lived there for those 6 months. You're now living there for 5 of those 6 months that they paid for. So that can also add up to quite a few $1,000s. Same with water and body corporate. So they get prorated back. So that's an extra cost that doesn't usually come up until the lawyers send you, here's the adjustment sheet. And you're like, oh my goodness, there's another $3,000 I got to find. So it's never a nice surprise. Insurance. A lawyer will always tell you the moment you buy a house, you sign a contract for a house or even vacant land to get insurance. And public liability for vacant land. So if you're taking out a mortgage, you will have to pay some sort of loan fee, establishment fee, valuation fee. And if you haven't got 20% deposit, plus all your fees, then you'll pay what they call LMI, which is Lender's Mortgage Insurance, which I forget the actual percentage, but it can be quite a few $1,000s that they usually add onto your mortgage as well sometimes. And of course, if you're buying a house, you need to do a building and pest report, particularly in Queensland, which is like one giant termite mound up here. It's always good. And New South Wales has some complicated land tax thing that I'm not even going to attempt to go near. So
we'll leave that to the solicitors.
Definitely. So you can see how, a few thousand here, $1,000 insurance, a few thousand on loan fees and LMI and your building and pest, it can add up very quickly, $30,000, $40,000 on top of your purchase cost for the house. And, excuse me, depending on how you decide to buy even just your own home, you might have it in your husband's name or your partner's name, or it might be in your name. You might need to get an accountant or a lawyer to sort out the entity for that. So you've also got those costs on top of it. So that's just your basic buy a house to live in, costs that you can incur. And it's always good to know what these things are and what you're up for on these things. And a simple call to counsel to go, hey, when's your rate cycle? And then you kind of know, well, if I'm buying in May and rates start and finish in June, you're not going to have a huge payout on those sort of things as well.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good tip, Karen, to ring counsel and find out what their cycle's like. So that's great.
It's cheaper than ringing the lawyer.
Yes, absolutely.
Or waiting for their results to come through.
Come back, yeah.
All right, now we get into the fun part.
Yes.
For more complicated sites, this is the rest. And this is where your costs just continue and go up and up and up and up.
They won't lie.
They won't lie. So these are your development costs. Now, a lot of this is an estimation on your Excel spreadsheet up front, because you're not going to know exactly until you get an engineers on site and the town planners on site. So this is just your initial guesstimate, approximation on what you think the prices will be, to give you an idea on how much you should be paying for the house on land or the development site, and what sort of costs you're going to have, and if you're going to make any profit in the end of it. So, all right, do you want to start on these ones, Rachel?
Yeah, sure. So normally, I mean, let's just think about a development site, even the one we were looking at before, the Balmoral, even though that was a site that was already developed. But anywhere between, if it's what we called an impact assessable DA, I'd be allowing anywhere between 50 to 100,000, depending on the size. And if it's anything extraordinary, so like a very, very large land subdivision, or a 10-story apartment building, you'd be looking anywhere up to $250,000 for a DA. So those costs can vary, of course, but that's something you need to sort of allow for, obviously, up front, and that includes your council fees and those types of things. Now, that'd be your architect, your land, like that's sort of like a bulk fee that's going to include a lot of those consultants in there. And then once your DA has been approved, that's not the only cost you have to incur. So after that, you're going to be looking for what they call a BA, and that's a building application permit, basically.
So we'll just explain, a DA is getting the development application. This allows you to just split a house block into two, correct, or a big land subdivision into 20, 200, or whatever it is. It's the development approval that you get, and then once you've got that, then you've got to get approval to build.
Correct.
No, they're not the same thing.
No. So you can't just go and dig the ground. Yes, you can't. We call it in the industry shovel ready. So when you have your BA, it means that you can actually start to do your build and turn the soil. So I normally allow, again, if it's a land subdivision, we're looking anywhere between $25,000 and $45,000 to get your BA done. Just depends on how large it is, again, and how many lots that would be for. Could be because you're going to be doing your electricals, your engineering. Again, there's certain, sort of very next layer down type of information that you need once the DA's been approved.
Yeah. And if you missed our session last week, we skipped a week, so we had one last week. We actually had a town planner, Elise, on here, and she went through quite a few things for us, which was a really interesting one, which feeds into what we're doing today. So even if you've bought a site that already has development application approval, you still need to consult all these people, because you've still just bought a vacant lot. You still got to get all the specialists involved and get to the next stage. So it always involves a town planner, but generally you're going to need one or all, and if not more, of these people. Civil engineers, an electrical engineer, architect to build, if you're building any buildings on there, landscaper, because no council is going to let you complete a subdivision without some sort of treescape or something in there. An arborist, if you need to cut trees down, you have to get them in. They name the trees, they put numbers on them all, they tell you which ones you can and cannot lose. And of course, the more you've got any water on the site or any stormwater issues, koalas, bushfires, they all have a specialist that you then have to consult, and you get a bushfire report done, you get a water report done, and of course that just has dollar signs next to every single one of those. So they're things that, all these little bits. We talked about overlays on the land last week. The more overlays you have, the more specialists you need to consult and get reports, because councils will say, hey, there's water crosses the bottom 2 metre corner of your block. We need a water report. So they're going to ask for these things anyway. So that just gives you an idea of why these things cost a lot of money. That's great.
On average, 100 grand.
Yeah, we used to add up to anything up to 150. You might be safe unless there were issues.
Yeah.
And of course, this one is my absolute favourite.
Council contributions.
So you pay for the deer, you pay for the beer, you pay for all the reports, you pay for your approval, everything under every meeting with council you pay for. But then on top of that, if you got a 10-lot subdivision, you've made one lot into 10, so there's 9 new lots you've created. So you pay this contribution fee to council, which most councils I've dealt with, it's around the $29,000 mark per new block of land. So if that's 9 lots, it's 9 times 29,000, which is just under $270,000. That's a lot, and that's for nothing other than your council contribution.
Yeah.
Always got to put that in.
And that also has to be paid too up front. Like you can't, it's not something you can defer. You have to pay that. It's all part of getting your titles and all those sorts of things. So definitely money that you need to allow for.
And just simply splitting a block of land into 2, there's $29,000 just gone before you do anything else as well.
Yeah.
So some of the other things you might have to deal with, if there's a building on the site that you're not keeping, you need to add in demolition costs. If you are keeping it needs a reno, you need to add in renovation costs. The big one is constructions and civils. So that's building the roads, the drains, the lighting, biobasin, guttering, constructing the actual dwellings that you're building, retaining walls if the land's not flat, these sort of things. And you will often get $500,000-$600,000 quotes just to build roads or just to build the drains, and then you've got a massive biobasin that you have to have. So costs do very quickly add up on these things, and unless you know what you're doing, you're going to have to hire a project manager.
Yay!
Yes, don't try and do it on your own unless you really know what you're doing. So and then on top of all of that, of course, up here it's Unity Water. I forget who your water board is down there, Rachel. Is it Unity?
I don't. Yeah, I think it's
I've forgotten it.
Yeah.
But you have to pay the local water people to put access. You've got to pay for the sewer, and you've got to pay to get all your Telstra lines and NBN, because nobody's going to buy a block of land off you that doesn't have any of these things on it. And council won't give you approvals that it's finished, and the state government won't give you titles to sell it if you don't have it. So, which is the next one. You got to pay for that too.
All these costs.
I'm not sure on the costs on titling, but you can guarantee that.
Yeah, I usually allow $1,500 per lot. Yeah, for titling and plan sealing. That usually covers off the majority of the costs for that. Yep. So yeah, I allow that as a separate cost down there.
So it's another state government charge. And then, of course, unless you've got a very, very big piggy bank full of money to cover all these costs, you're going to need to go to a bank. You may be lucky enough to get normal banks, or you have to go to more private funding, sort of like your next tier down banking, and they're going to charge you an arm and two legs to do stuff. So there's that. And of course, you always need a contingency because something will always happen. It'll rain, you'll hit rock. Something always happens. So you always need that. So that
Or
just gives you an idea.
you might have to extend settlement or something. So you're holding,
Extend settlement.
it's for holding, extra holding
Yes.
costs and things that that are unforeseen. Normally that's what your contingencies used for. And if you don't spend it, well, great, just goes into your pocket as profit.
Excellent, yes. So as you can see, if you get some of these figures really wrong, or you forget some of them, or you leave them off your feasibility, they can be hundreds of thousands of dollars you're out on your costings. And for people who are selling blocks and go, hey, I'm going to sell to a developer and I'm going to make a huge amount of money, this is why a developer may not buy your block, because these are all the fees and charges that they know they're going to have to go through. And some of these things you have to do and pay for in your due diligence period before you've actually secured the block. So there can be a lot of money spent paying a town planner to, even if it's got a D8, to look over the DA, to pick up bits and pieces, because they can be 80, 100 pages long. And, you need someone who knows what they're doing to look at it and go, hey, council want this in there, council need this in there. And these things are all going to cost you money. And you may need to even consult a civil engineer while you're in the due diligence. So there can be a few $1,000s handed out before you've actually even secured the contract. And then you might turn around and go, this just doesn't work. And you're going to walk away. So that's why having all this and doing it all is so important.
Yeah. And even in the due diligence time, the numbers are constantly shifting and changing. And there's a lot of developers that go to contract on sites and through the due diligence time find costs that they haven't allowed for, that do actually turn the sites into something that don't work. So, it's really important in that time to make sure that you're really nutting down on those numbers. And it's a process, and it can be learned. And like I said to you before, it's not hard to learn these things. You've just got to, connect with the right people and ask the right questions and make sure you're not forgetting anything. So I can already think of a few things we can add.
Yes. And I probably wouldn't start with a 20-lot subdivision for your very first time unless you've got a project manager in your back pocket. Exactly. All right. There's a few other little things. So if you've had to take out a loan, you do have to pay it back. Some banks will allow you to accumulate, so you don't have to pay back until you're sort of like 12 months into the project. But of course, you pay for that. But you've got to include all those fees. And sometimes on a bigger project, that could be worth over $100,000 in interest payments that you eventually have to pay for. So we usually separate them, because the land, you've got to pay for that from day one. But then your development costs, it might be 3-6 months down the track. It could be 12 months if you have to go through and get all the approvals from scratch. It could be 12 months before you actually start with any bulldozers on site. So the costs of that could be a little bit less than the land.
And that's probably the one thing I find is left out the most, Karin. So take note, everybody. Interest is such an important thing to account for, because if you don't account, like you said, it can make or break a deal, and interest is very, very important. So really important, like very, again, it's just one of those things that people are missing sometimes in their numbers. They don't account for that sort of stuff. So good to point that out.
You're into the millions by the time you're building the buildings and you've done the roads and the drains and all of that, you could be in for millions of dollars into the bank. you times that by 9%, and that really does start to add up. You'll be looking at $150,000+ by the end of it. But of course, the one we always forget, you always see people forget. It's one thing to buy the land, build it, do all that stuff, but most people don't add in the getting rid of it part. And once again, that can be worth hundreds and hundreds of $1,000s. If you're selling 10 lots and they're worth 400,000 each, that's 4 million. You've just lost 3% to an agent to sell them all. Plus the marketing, and for bigger stuff, you might have your own website, your own special marketing stuff done. And then, of course, you got to pay a solicitor to do all the selling legals.
Yeah.
So that's probably another $1,000 or $12 per lot that you've done. So that can add up to quite a bit of money at the end.
Absolutely. Yeah, I normally allow about $1,200 for the legals on selling, on the selling end. And yes, definitely 3%. And sometimes if they're, if depending on the strategy, and you might have to go through marketing companies, that can be anywhere up to 7% in selling fees. So, really important numbers to include in your feasibility. And if it is a house or that you're selling or a renovated home, you want to get it staged, because you want people to be able to see what it's going to be like for them to live there.
There's the staging. I was going to say, I forgot to put staging in. Yes.
It could be a couple of $1,000s easy. Probably anywhere between $2,000 to $4,000, depending on the size of the home.
$4,000 to $5,000 maybe. Yeah,
for sure. So really important to have all of those costs. Now, you might not end up using them at the end of the day, but it's really important to allow for all of these things at the start. And if the site then still makes a profit, then you're going to do really well.
Well, I'll bring up your feasibility. And another thing both Rachel and I do is, if selling, I haven't got it. Hold on, I can't read what you've written. 885,000. So a standard price to sell a townhouse in Balmoral might be, say, 920,000, 900 on a bad day. But just to be safe, in case market drops a bit, or you just can't sell it and you need to drop your price because you can't hold them forever, you just put the price down a bit, so you're going to be able to sell them every day of the week at 885,000. You might get 920, but you're going to get 885. So we will always do our feasos on the price we know we could get if we had to sell it at that. So often
always
it's a
good
little
to be
bit
conservative.
below. So it's a little bit below what you would like to get, but at least it's a safe price. Now, once you've done that and you've got your safe price in, we've estimated all our costs, all our extra bits, marketing to sell. So just on this one alone, there's 73,000 gone on it. And if you've had a referral, somebody's found the property for you, you've got an extra cost on there, which we've not put in our fees at this stage. GST, I will leave that to the accountants. But
that's the most complicated.
Get in.
But it's definitely something you need to include in your feasibility, because as you can see there's quite a lot of a difference there. And if that wasn't calculated as part of your formula, you're going to be looking at a false indication of what your profit is. So the GST really is an important part.
So if you've been safe in your sale fees and you've put in every fee that you can reasonably imagine and it still makes money, good. You're going to be okay. But if that was somewhere around 8-9%, it doesn't take much for a couple of things to go wrong, a couple of costs to blow out, and you've made no money at all. 8 or 9%, unless you've got a pocket full of cash and you're not paying any loan fees, I wouldn't get out of bed for 8 or 9%.
I love it.
So they're just things to think of. Some people might be happy only to make $10,000 on a project that's cost them 12 months of a nightmare of their life. I don't, because it doesn't take much, and it's all gone. So
and the other thing to consider too is when you're learning to do feasibilities and you're putting them together, have someone else in the industry check it out for you. So, take some time. It doesn't take much to ask someone else to say, hey, can you run over my numbers for me? And just give, because you might be able to pick something up that they might be able to pick something up that you haven't been able to account for. Or they might say, look, you're a little bit low on this. I'd allow a little bit more. I was only talking to one of my clients today, and we were comparing our numbers, and we needed to add in a little bit more for one of the areas because we felt due to one of the overlays, there'd be some extra costs. So really good to get someone else to look them over. And you learn that way. You learn through talking to other people.
Even if you've got to buy them a coffee or a bottle of wine or something. It could save you hundreds of thousands of dollars later on. So it's definitely worth that.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I think we've just about covered everything we need to get through for today. It just gives you a brief idea all the things you need to include. Even if you're just buying your own house, there's still a bucket load of people with their hand out wanting money from you when you buy your own house. And there's even more hands when you're buying a development site. So hopefully that's been a bit of an insight to people on what you need to start preparing or looking at. If anyone's got any questions, you can always shoot us an email or, put something on Facebook. So our Property for Chicks Facebook page, come and join us. And we'll be back in about 2 weeks' time, same time in 2 weeks. And we're going to have a property agent, just discuss buying and selling a house with. So Thank you, Rachel.
You're welcome.
Everyone online.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll see you in 2 weeks' time. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.